Mr. D'Ascenzo, Mr. Sanford, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Great. All right. Good afternoon. We are on the record in case number 2021-00241, Electronic 2021 Integrated Resource Plan of Duke Energy Kentucky Incorporated. My name is Kent Chandler. I'm chairman of the Kentucky Public Service Commission. Will be presiding over the conference today. The purpose of the conference is to discuss the procedure for the May 17th, 2022 hearing in this Integrated Resource Plan case. It's my understanding that as parties to this case, we have the applicant, Duke Kentucky. We also have the Attorney General's Office of Rate Intervention, the Sierra Club, and of course, not a party, explicitly not a party, but participating commission staff. So if we could, before we get started here, I'll just do a short entry of appearance. So for Duke Energy.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. It's David Sanford and Rocco D'Ascenzo. And then also with this is Patrick Keel and Mina Sunderman.
And for the Attorney General's Office of Rate Intervention.
Good afternoon, Chairman. This is Angela Goad. I'm filling in for Larry Cook today, who's under the weather for the Attorney General's office.
Okay. I guarantee you this will be a lot easier than filling in for counsel in a motion hour, Ms. Goad.
Mr.
I agree.
If I just got a text from Mr. D'Ascenzo saying that he's not able to hear.
He's not able to hear. Well, I definitely think it's on his. So, Mr. Miller, can you hear me?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Yes, I can.
Okay. We'll give Mr. D'Ascenzo a minute to maybe do an IT check to see if he can.
You know, sometimes maybe rebooting, and when that little thing pops up that says, do you want to allow audio access? I don't know. Sometimes that's worked for me. If you hit allow on the browser.
Mr. Sanford, do you mind text Mr. D'Ascenzo and just ask him to close out and try to come back in, and we'll take a short. We won't go off the record or anything, but we'll just take a short break.
Sure.
Great. While we're doing that, so we've got Ms. Goad, Mr. Miller.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. Matthew Miller on behalf of Sierra Club. I apologize. I wasn't able today to get to a place where I can be on video, but
That's
you're
okay.
on audio.
I don't think it'll be pertinent. And for commission staff.
Ben Bellamy for commission staff.
All right. Mr. D'Ascenzo, can you hear us yet?
So I dialed in on my phone, so I can hear that way.
Okay.
It's not coming through.
And we can hear you just fine, and we can see you on the video just fine. Does this work well enough for you?
Yes.
Great. So, Mr. Sanford, Mr. D'Ascenzo, this is your all's, effectively your all's request. I have in front of me the list of the 25 individuals who have provided some sort of data request responses. It's my understanding, by looking at this list, so it is my understanding, right, if I look at this list, you've got approximately a dozen witnesses that have provided one or two responses. You've got Dr. Pasti, witness Back, Suez, Ruscio, and Park that have provided the bulk of the data request responses. It's my understanding that IRPs ordinarily don't have pre-filed testimony. Do you know if there were any, in addition to data request responses, were there any verifications filed with the application that would be any additional witnesses or people that supported the IRP? I mean, I assume you could do that, but I don't know that you all did.
I would have to double check. I think our president, Amy Spiller, may have submitted an affidavit with the IRP.
Okay.
As standard filing. I'll have to double check that.
All right. So we've got those 25 witnesses. It's my understanding, Mr. D'Ascenzo, that the purpose of wanting the conference is to discuss the availability of the witnesses and the need for the 25 to come, maybe even I don't know what your intention, your real hope is, maybe to narrow the inquiry, to have a little bit of ideas, maybe what the questions are. I don't know that I can speak, certainly not for the AG's office or Sierra Club or even frankly commission staff, since it's their report in this matter. But is that fair? Is that the idea of the purpose of today's conference?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, and a number of these witnesses, we certainly will be prepared to make them all available if that's necessary. A number of them are actually located in Charlotte, at our corporate headquarters. So, if there's a desire for making all of these witnesses available, the second part of this would be, is there a way to convert at least a portion of the hearing virtual, so that we don't have to make them fly all the way to Frankfurt for one question.
Okay. So, well, I'll just ask, Mr. Bellamy, this hearing's not for another 3 weeks. I would assume that staff hasn't narrowed down which witnesses necessarily. Let me ask this, Mr. Bellamy. The witnesses I noted that have 5 or more data requests: Suez, Ruscio, Park, Dr. Pasty, and witness back. Do you expect to have questions of those 5?
I expect we'll probably have questions for those.
Okay. Mr. D'Ascenzo, do you have any objection? It just may be better to work backwards here. Do you have any objection or a concern of having those particular 5 witnesses as a start? You're not asking for any of those to be excused. Is that fair?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'm not asking for anything in particular to be excused, just hoping to get a handle on what those would be. In fact, we would be, certainly willing to make everybody appear as necessary in person. We have already communicated to those particular witnesses to expect to be there in person, given that they have carried a significant amount of the data requests. But it's more of the onesie, twosie, threesies that we are inquiring about.
Okay. So we know those 5 will need to attend. Has the company endeavored at all to indicate or try to figure out whether or not there are particular data request responses that have been responded to by one witness that can be adopted by a separate witness?
We have not done that, Your Honor. We can certainly look into that and see if one of maybe the top 5 would be willing to. The difficulty, I think, is on the subject matter. For example, just looking at my list, the first one at the top is Brett Phipps, for example. The question that he supported involved the international demand for coal, and what we're seeing there and how that's impacting the market. That's something in his unique area of expertise.
That's fair. I just, one was Sarah Lawler, but another was Bruce Sailors. I just didn't know, there may be instances in which the 2 data requests that Mr. Sailors responded to could be answered by Ms. Lawler or vice versa, so we can narrow the universe that we're talking about. It's a different conversation when you've got 25 versus if you had 10 or 15. So here's the first thing I'll say. Although we always have an expectation when the case begins and as the case is being adjudicated that witnesses will arrive and be here in person, I do think there's an acknowledgement that this is a significant number of witnesses, and I think it's fair to say, having been in a couple of IRP hearings, not every one of these witnesses, the majority of these witnesses probably won't have any questions or very few questions. So I think that for the sake of efficiency, that it's fine to have this conversation in a case like an IRP. That although I think they're incredibly important, there's not going to be a final commission decision. Ms. Goad, I know you're filling in for Mr. Cook today. Beyond those 5, do you know of any particular witnesses that the Attorney General's office will have questions for the May 17th hearing?
I do not, but I do have authority to state that our office has no objection to Duke's request for some of their witnesses to testify virtually.
Okay. Mr. Miller, same questions. Do you have any particular witnesses other than the 5 indicated that you do expect to have questions for, and any objection to any particular individuals participating remotely?
Thank you, Your Honor. Certainly no objection to remote participation, nor would we have any objection to other witnesses adopting certain witnesses' responses. I wish I did have a list right now. I don't. I can say I don't frankly anticipate we'll have very extensive cross. I think I count 6 Duke witnesses that sponsored responses to Sierra Club's requests. I can get that list prepared. I can try to hop on it, but we're very flexible as to who appears and how.
Okay. So here's what we'll do, Mr. D'Ascenzo. And this is what I would propose. First is to identify those witnesses that you think, and I'm going to be very honest. If you end up coming back and say we need all 25, that's fine. The last thing I want, and one of the more frustrating things about being in a hearing, is where somebody has adopted someone else's data request response out of the sake of efficiency, and then you ask them a question about it, and even very simple questions, and they go, "Well, I don't know the answer to that. I didn't prepare this." I don't want to get into that. So if the answer to this first inquiry is about narrowing down or seeing if people are going to adopt that you still need the full 25, that's fine. My expectation is that I think everybody should plan for the hearing to go from 9 to 5. If it's shorter, it's shorter. We'll do the ordinary hearing. I know I've blocked off the entirety of the 17th. If we go past 5 o'clock, we're doing something wrong, but that doesn't mean that Mr. D'Ascenzo that we're infallible. So if you will see if you can narrow down, but only if it's reasonable, and then file. And I would ask, this is the first thing on the witnesses, and then we'll get to counsel in a second. File a short motion requesting those witnesses that you would like to still have available to participate, but would like to participate remotely. Identify those. And I know how many data request responses they responded to, but I don't have handy the general topic of their data request responses. So if you could just provide their name, their title, and the general topics of their data request responses, and just seek that they be able to participate in the hearing remotely or virtually, and that they will appear. If you have, well, I'll just start with that. If you have an anticipation of, let me take a step back. Does anybody have any objection to that?
The Attorney General's office has no objection.
Okay. So first is just ask leave for those witnesses that you would like to testify remotely. I'm going to look at a calendar here, Mr. D'Ascenzo. The first thing is, if you guys, if you're going to have people book flights that are going to be denied the motion or whatever else, I want that to be as soon as possible to save you a bit of expense, company a bit of expense. So, when do you think that you could file that motion indicating which witnesses you can have here in person and which that you would like to participate remotely?
I certainly by, I would say next Wednesday, we should be able to file something.
Okay. If you can file a motion next Wednesday, given that there aren't any objections today, and understanding that the 5 are going to be here in person, the 5 or more are going to be here in person, Mr. Bellamy, can we get an order out? If the motion is filed on the 4th, can we get an order out on this on the 6th?
Yes, we could.
Just approving which witnesses that are remote. So you'll have certainty by the end of the day on the 6th, Mr. D'Ascenzo, which witnesses. And then, do you, Mr. D'Ascenzo, do you have an expectation that any requests for counsel to appear remotely?
I am not anticipating that.
Okay, Ms.
I
Goode,
plan on,
do you know if the Attorney General's office will be requesting counsel to appear remotely?
Chairman, I don't know right now. We're not expecting it, but I can't, since the lead counsel is under the weather right now, I just don't want to make an affirmative
So
statement.
Yeah, so let's just do the same thing. So by the end of the day on the 4th, Duke would need to file its motion regarding its witness availability, or not just availability, but the presentation of witnesses in person versus virtually. And the same thing with counsel. If counsel would like to request to participate remotely, that those would need to be filed by the 4th. Mr. Miller, have you filed a motion for Pro Hoc Vice in this case?
Your Honor, I haven't yet. I apologize for that. Well, I do plan on doing that. Regret that we didn't get it in before today, so thank you for your
Yeah,
grace.
that's why I'm trying not to ask you very many questions. I didn't think you had. So let me just say it this way, that if anybody is going to file to participate remotely as counsel or witness, the motions to do so would need to be filed by the 4th. And I think that prior to that, anybody that's going to seek to admit somebody pro hoc vice, we would need that to be filed with us prior to the 4th. Because my expectation is, well, we would need that before we could rule on whether somebody could participate remotely. I'll say it that way.
Very well.
So, we'll get an order out on all of those, Mr. D'Ascenzo, by the end of that week. I suspect, do you have anything other than that you'd like to talk about in the conference ahead of the scheduling ahead of the May 17th hearing? That you'd like to talk about today? Excuse me. This is only my second cup of coffee and I'm really struggling.
I don't. Let me ask my co-counsel, David, is there anything?
No, I mean, let me just ask if it would be okay with the chairman, would you mind if we communicated with the co-counsel staff and see if there were any witnesses that we could actually eliminate from needing to appear?
You're certainly, my hope would be that you would, if, let me say it this way. You're more than welcome in your motion to make it in the alternative request, that you can ask, I'm just making somebody up here, but Adam Nygaard, that if your request is that Adam Nygaard be excused, but in the alternative allowed to participate remotely, I suspect that that would be the most efficient, effective way to do that. That would, though, require, I think, the other parties to respond by the end of the day on the 5th as to whether or not they have an objection with particular witnesses being excused. So you're more than welcome to, we'll put that in our order following this conference, that you can seek to do so, but that responses in opposition to witnesses being excused would have to be filed by the next day. But we'll put that in a post-conference sort of scheduling order, so that we memorialize this.
Thank you.
My preference personally is to make them available, and to take up whether they need to be a witness that day at the beginning of the hearing. I don't know that there may be much harm, much foul by dismissing them at 9 a.m. versus telling them a couple of days ahead of time that they don't have to appear.
Sure.
If
That
they're
makes
going to
sense.
be, if they're virtual, certainly. My hope is, Mr. Sanford, that we get to a point here that we don't have anybody flying to Kentucky to not receive a question in an IRP proceeding in which there will be no final order.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, is there anything else, Mr.
No.
Bally?
Not that I'm aware of.
Ms. Goode, anything else?
Nothing from our office. Thank you, Chairman.
So just to recap, we'll enter an order in the next day or two, setting the date for the motion to be the end of the day on the 4th. Objections to witnesses being dismissed, end of the day on the 5th. And we will take efforts to get an order entered by the end of the day on the 6th regarding virtual participation and whether witnesses could be excused. Okay. I do have one more request, Mr. Sanford, Mr. Diacenzo. We had a recent hearing in which was in person, and the request for the witness to be excused was personal in nature. The motion was heavily redacted, and it was perfectly fine. We granted the petition for confidentiality, given the personal nature of the request. I think that exclusively the number of the small magnitude of interaction that these individuals have had with this case and will likely have in the hearing would be sufficient cause for the commission's decision, and that there won't be any need to go any further if there's a particular individual or individuals that have concerns with traveling or health concerns, whatever it may be. There's no need for you all to have to plead that or for us to have to roll on it on that basis, given the efficiency we're looking for here.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Okay. All right, with nothing else, we'll adjourn the formal conference. Thank you all for the indulgence.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your flexibility and understanding.
Thanks.